Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course I'm joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and one of the biggest plans behind India's demonetization when they took out about 86% of cash and coin in circulation was to stop, the criminals in the black market, when really the criminals continue to thrive, and on top of that, well, most of all, because the government's in charge, the criminals continue to thrive because they are the criminals. But on top of that, all the free market activity that thrived for so long in India, off the grid, is being decimated, and it's pushing a lot of people into poverty. And as this Zero Hedge article shows, Modi's demonetization called colossal failure that ruined economy as India GDP growth slumps to two-year lows. And I'm going to go into this article, but I have to point out this is exactly what we had predicted when we first reported on this issue quite some time ago. Now, as the article says, India's embattled Prime Minister Narendra Modi faced a double whammy of abuse this week as his nation's economic growth collapsed to its weakest since Q1 2014. And India's central bank released a report on Modi's extraordinary demonetization plan last year, showing that 99% of the high-denomination banknotes canceled last year were deposited or exchanged for new currency, crushing Modi's lie that his contentious war on cash would wipe out huge amounts of so-called black money. Now, John, you've looked into this quite a bit. This cashless society system is just dreadful. It's destroying people throughout the world, pushing people further into debt servitude. Of course, this is a centrally planned cashless society. So as I always go into, if your money's in the bank, it's not yours, it's the bank's. And if your money's always going through the banks, through digital transactions, legal tender laws, centralization, it's never in your hand. You don't own it. The bank always owns your money, and you're in perfect servitude to the bank. What do you think, John?
Well, first of all, they said that big amounts was we put back into cash again. That just makes me laugh. Anyway, so that's the war on cash right there, a big failure. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, some of this would have happened here is the cut in income that the government gets on the cash that they create, which is seigniorage. And you should look that up, actually. It's a real thing, and I found it out just not very long ago, and very few people know what seigniorage is. This is how it works. So seigniorage works. You print, let's say I'm gonna use the American dollar as an example, $100 bill. The cost of making it's about $1 and something cents. The rest is it's actually money that the government makes, and it gets pushed back into the budget as a part of the GDP. Some countries have up to 3-4% of GDP is seigniorage. So a certain hit of this is, of course, the seigniorage from the income that they used to get from the higher denominated bills. That's a huge hit for the government. What I found interesting is Raghuram Rajan, the former head of the Bank of India, and he also warned about the 2008 crisis. That's how he kind of got he was called a Luddite by Lawrence Summers after his speech. But Raghuram Rajan is on the side of the big world governments. He's clearly wanting these. But what he said, and I found it very interesting, is he said costs of cash ban would outweigh the benefits. Raghuram Rajan said. I don't know if you understand what seigniorage is as a central banker, but there is a lot of actually loss in in income from cutting out cash, going full of cashless, and that's what of course Kenneth Rogoff talks about as well. Is that that loss of income through seigniorage, but then of course you get into control over the populace. The government of course outweighs the loss of that 0.5% to up to 6% of GDP in income from printing money, which is another crazy thing to think about, how much money they make of printing money in the first place. But what is happening here is, of course, that is number one of the failures. My other belief is, of course, that the black market in India is so smart, it's been around forever, and it's very free market there, so people found ways to get around it. And it might not necessarily been it might have been a hit on certain parts of the Indian economy, but they can't really count the black market economy. So what is happening also is that black market economy is still there, but the small business, the people that actually were involved and doing legal things with the government, legal extortion through taxation, they were the ones that got hit the hardest, I believe, and that's what you're seeing in the loss of the growth of the Indian country. Now, of course, India is slowly heading towards like an aging of the population. They've had a massive boom. They're at I believe, are they the biggest country in the world, or the second? I don't know exactly if it's China or India, but they have a massive population.
They might even be third. I'm not sure.
So they got into a point now where it's kind of like China. China was crazy because they basically built ghost cities, but India is kind of starting to slow down a little bit. It's not growing as fast. Like, it's insane. 5.7% growth is like a crazy amount of growth in the economy when you think about it. So we can't really like take this too much and say like, oh, it's all bad. I believe India is going to get out of this, but I think with, unfortunately, the Aadhaar system and all of these technocratic improvements that the government did, I think that is going to come out back and hit the privacy and of course trying to attack the people that are just hating the government and trying to avoid getting taxed to death.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's there's a surveillance state. There's the central planning, the poverty, the debt state. When a populace is in fear and when a populace is in debt, a populace is in servitude. And it's really important to mention that Aadhaar system because obviously we went into it quite a few times before. But basically, what the Aadhaar system is it allows people to use retina scans.
Biometrics, fingerprints.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this technocratic rollout of all this crazy AI, which allows them to not just track you, not just get facial recognition, but also be able to pay with your eye or pay with your thumb or blah, 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 blah. Stuff that people thought was just conspiracy theory in the 1980s and 90s is now right out there in the open in one of the biggest countries population-wise in the world. And it's growing on a day-to-day level because, of course, India and China, who have been in a bit of a competition, man-to-man over the last few months, especially, they are both unrolling or unraveling this technocratic state, the state that was pushed forward most definitively in the 1970s via the hand of Henry Kissinger as Secretary of State and his diplomacy with Mao Zedong. And, of course, the move forward under Jimmy Carter was the Zbigniew Brzezinski and the Trilateral Commission.
And Rockefeller, of course.
Absolutely. And what it's really turned into is that they are pushing this technocratic state in both China, India. They're unrolling it in Australia with facial recognition passports, etc. Sweden, big time. It's starting to really affect Canada, and it's growing on a day-to-day level all over the world. And what this is going to lead to is one of these countries, and I think it's going to be China personally, but India seems to be in competition there, for that massive world reserve cashless currency system to be implemented into the special drawing rights at the IMF. And of course, the IMF has spoken about how they might plan to move to China in the coming years. But
listen,
there's a power shift.
The real reason behind this cashless system is the taxation. And, of course, that they can implement negative interest rates to constantly take money out of your account.
And surveillance so you can't evade any of it. And it's really something that we need to start talking a bit more outwardly about because this isn't Bitcoin that I'm talking about. This isn't the cashless system that is decentralized. This is a completely centrally planned system. So right now, I think only about 3% of fiat paper money in the United States is actually printed on paper. The rest is all digital as it is. And with this unrolling, it's already started with this debt-based currency printed out of thin air into oblivion. Now they're going to push it onto the blockchain and have like this massive debt-based...
well, they'll have a control grid that will see everything that's happening, and it's easy to track with the blockchain, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just fiat, but worse. And I never thought I would have been saying that years ago when I first started looking into fiat paper currency back in about 2007. When I started looking into that, I never would have thought that, and I'll completely admit my ignorance of it at the time, that there would be this cashless, blockchain, centrally planned system being unrolled and put into the world currency at the SDR. I knew there was going to be a world currency, but this is dangerous.
Well, there's been there's been technological changes. There was, first you started like exchanging commodities and bartering. And then, of course, you got the mintage of coins. That was the first step towards the fiat currency system, where they forced you to use, the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, different currencies that were, printed by the kings and queens and whoever was in control.
Or paper IOU notes that they printed more of than they had reserves.
Yeah, and that's what the next technological advancement was, of ripping off and Ponzi scheming. The general populace was the paper notes. And now we turn into, the electrical era, where we have the technology now to have everything be completely off of your hands, and you wouldn't even own any money physically.
Absolutely. It's all being thrown in our faces, folks, and we have an opportunity, though. It's not all bad. It all comes down to the solutions, right? And people want to hear solutions, so we try to mention these solutions in as many reports as we can. The solution is freedom, the free market, self-sustainability, financial responsibility, food, water, shelter, defense, so you're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block, and then sound money, so gold, silver, and yes, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, of course, is based on scarcity and demand, much like gold and silver, and it's really important that people have diversity within their financial portfolio.
Well, you need the off-grid living. It's, first of all, self-sustainable off-grid living, mentally off-grid living.
Yeah.
Then you got wealth off-grid, right? So you just protect yourself, and you're not dependent on anybody like the government wants you to be. So you're that free individual that could, thrive and really create a tremendous amount of wealth. And that's what people in control, the elitists hate, because throughout history they've been able to stop everybody from doing things like that because they had the control grid in place. But now they're losing the game big time.
Absolutely. They want you in debt servitude, as I so often say. If they shove you down a bottomless pit of debt, you are forced to ask for a ladder up from the government or the banking system, and that puts you in perfect servitude to them, and that puts them in a really good position, folks. So until next time, thanks for going into this with us, John. We'll be back at you with much more. This is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth,
be the change.
Now to sound like an auctioneer. Thanks for watching, everyone. Check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored by YouTube as they bring in the Anti-Defamation League to flag all of our content as hate speech. Also check our Bitcoin address in the description in the comments, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And don't forget to check me out at Josh Sigurdson at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid via cryptocurrency, Steem that is, by the upvote and demand of your post. It's bound to take out the dinosaur social media, so I hope to see you there. But until next time, check out this word from our sponsor.
Are you looking to exchange a large amount of US dollars? Don't overpay with the bank on currency exchange. Think outside the bank. Banks charge unnecessary fees of up to 3%. Truth be told, currency exchange with the bank will cost you hundreds to thousands of dollars. Start saving now. Step 1. Register online. Visit our website and click Get Started. Step 2. Book a transaction. Phone us for a quote and to complete the transaction. We'll need to know which currencies you are converting and how much. Step 3. Transfer of funds. Once you confirm the transaction, we initiate an electronic funds transfer from the account that you choose. Your purchased funds are then transferred back to you in the account that you choose within 1 business day. It's that easy. Start saving hundreds of dollars on currency exchange with CBCE. Sign up online or give us a call today.